It's January 27th, 2025, and this is the Info Dump. I'm Harold Moss, and I've got the flu, but with all the information, disinformation, and general evil horseshit getting dumped on us by this new Trump reign of error and terrors, we really couldn't put off launching this new weekly news dump another week. We're pulling together some of the top stories on climate, collapse, and the general glories of end-stage colonialism, trying to make some sense of the chaos and to hopefully be part of the conversation of what we might do. Trump's barrage of executive orders, not to mention his unhinged public statements, are, as intended, over the top and non-stop, intended to do the maximum damage to the proper functioning of government, and equally so, to sap the will of the country to resist this fusillade of inhuman, life-destroying nonsense. The executive orders are pretty much a transcription of Project 2025. I mean, this guy obviously doesn't even know what he's signing. Doesn't have to. Project 2025, if you don't know, is the right-wing Heritage Foundation think tank's plan for destroying the federal government to make way for Christian nationalism and oligarchy. Here are some lowlights. Ending birthright citizenship, including talking about ending birthright citizenship for Native Americans. I mean, I can't even... It probably won't survive the courts because the whole thing is blatantly unconstitutional, but then the billionaires have bought the Supreme Court, so no assumptions. Trump withdrew us from the World Health Organization while we're still dealing with the last global pandemic and facing down the possibility of an even worse one if avian flu mutates to allow for human-to-human transmission. A real possibility. Immigration raids have begun against the people who make sure food gets on our shelves, our buildings get built, and so much more. He's letting the jackboots and ICE and the Border Patrol break into schools, churches, and hospitals to do it. Ah, MAGA Jesus. It's stupid, inflationary, inhumane, and also, just for the record, undocumented folks in the U.S. pay around $100 billion in taxes every year and will contribute around $200,000 more in taxes than they receive in benefits over their lifetimes. Yep, they are keeping this economy going in every way. Next up, no vetting for security clearances for White House staff. Well, that's a no-brainer when you're surrounded by grifters, criminals, and foreign agents. Stacking his cabinet with drunks, crackpots, rapists, grifters, and yeah, foreign agents. And, here we go, on climate, let's just say Trump sure hates solar power.
You know what else people don't like? Those massive solar fields.
And Trump sure hates wind.
They're horrible. We don't want windmills in this country. We're putting an order out. I've already sort of done it. We don't want windmills.
I wonder why. Was he frightened by solar panel as a child? Imprint too strongly to the lovely 1972 adaptation of the Broadway musical Man of La Mancha and dedicated his life to tilting at windmills. Surrender! What is that? Oh, right. That's the $445 million that Big Oil invested in Trump and the GOP. He asked for $1 billion, but seems to have been satisfied by half that. So, what did Big Oil earn for their $445 million? Trump took us out of the Paris Climate Accord, the wildly insufficient but still critical effort to maintain global temperatures within civilization-supporting levels. Opened up the Alaskan wilderness to oil drilling. Freezed permitting for offshore wind projects, wind, the cheapest damn energy source on the planet right now that also, doesn't contribute to burning down entire towns and cities. Ended regulation of dangerous fossil fuel emissions. The emissions that are part of the overall fossil fuel air pollution that kills over 8 million people a year around the world. Just stop regulating them. Because, ended the electric vehicle mandate. And just ending climate policies altogether. Now, given that the fossil fuel industry earns around $3 billion in profit a day, you heard that right, $500 million in bribes to get all of that is a pretty good deal. Gotta love a system that sells off the future so cheaply and even makes it legal. This all sounds terrible, and it is, and there's a lot more I couldn't even get into. But this is the beginning of the fight, not the end. Just because Trump passes an executive order doesn't mean it's happening. Virtually every executive order is being challenged in court, and he has a terrible track record of winning these suits. And, of course, resistance on the ground will be critical. But how did we get here? And more importantly, what do we do? A couple of thoughts. First of all, while there is absolutely a sharp move to the right amongst the world's billionaires, let's not overstate the move to the right by the rest of us. And apologies, if I somehow have a billionaire in the audience, you can give us some money to fight oligarchy, or, fuck right off. Trump didn't win a mandate. His popular vote margin was small. COVID-spiked inflation saw ruling parties across the world tossed out, though in our case, it was to bring in the inflator-in-chief. The Democrats made many cell phones, like not having a primary with a candidate who we now know probably wasn't ready to even finish another term. And most infuriating, refusing to put any limits on Netanyahu's genocide in Gaza. The reason behind up to 1/3 of the voters who would have voted for Harris staying at home. Somehow, greenlighting and arming the genocide of Palestinians was a higher priority than stopping fascism in America. At least they all played nice at the inauguration. We've also clearly seen the victory of disinformation over information on social platforms and much of the news landscape, a battle that we see as central to the Undeniable Project. And critically, as the ever-essential Greg Palast documents with some great reporting, we'll link to below, on a fundamental level, it was voter suppression that got Trump back in the White House. Not some criminal tech wizardry by Elon Musk, please. That guy couldn't code his way out of a paper bag. This is all going on out in the open, with basically every state Trump won having enacted new restrictive voting laws between 2021 and 24. Palast figures these laws cut Harris's vote by at least 3.5 million. And this guy has been on this particular case for a long time. Now, most of what Trump is doing is extremely unpopular, including pardoning the January 6ers, pedophiles and all, child sex traffickers, etc. And everything he's doing, from tariffs to mass deportations, are setting up some supercharged inflationary pressures. This is very possibly Trump's peak of power. So, give yourself the space to feel bad. Recognize tremendous damage is and will be done. But don't let these losers convince you of a power they don't have. Never, I repeat, never say things like, if we ever have elections again. They want us to feel hopeless. They need to appear invincible. Simply put, we need to organize. Show up when ICE and the Border Patrol are raiding our local churches and schools to deport people. Scream down, punch down, do what you gotta do to every racist and transphobe and homophobe and fascist, and make them truly afraid to show their face or open their mouth in public, wherever they show up. And that means standing up for every vulnerable person in this country. Don't stop talking about Gaza and Palestine. Biden was terrible, we know. And of course, Trump is somehow managing to be even worse, now openly calling for the expulsion of every Palestinian from Gaza. At the heart of it all, don't let them win in here. The end of centuries of colonialism was never going to be simple or pretty. But in all of its chaos and disaster, it does offer the potential for a better world indeed. That's not a roadmap, obviously. It's a plea for us to find one and then walk that path together. This planet has more wealth and life and beauty than is imaginable. The only place like it in the literal universe, as far as we know. It is our job to protect it. And that means protecting each other. So let's get started. And in closing, remember, in life, as in comedy, never punch down. Always punch up. And punching a Nazi, the highest form of public service. Let's go.